During the stencil preparation, Alex first focuses on the main shapes. In this case, the glasses, nose, mouth, trying not to go overboard with the line work of every little shape to avoid a busy and hard-to-read stencil. When it comes to the hair, for example, the priority goes to the main ones that define the movement of them, working them to the maximum rendering only when tattooing. At this stage, Alex is only worried to break the drawing down to the basic shapes, easy to follow on the reference picture while tattooing. He then roughly isolates the light areas. A simple stencil is key because while tattooing you're not distracted from what really matters in the photo reference. Alex in this case works the stencil in details in the mouth, nose, glasses and the net on the forehead. It is very important placing the stencil just right. When positioning the stencil on a narrow and curvy body part like the arms, and particularly the forearm, the risk is to have not an anatomical fairness, and the expression itself can drastically change. It is very important placing the stencil just right. When positioning the stencil on a narrow and curvy body part like the arms, and particularly the forearm, the risk is to have not an anatomical fairness, and the expression itself can drastically change. If you lean the picture slightly, also you might lose the feel of it. To avoid this, he marks the direction and the tilt of the face to line it with the body. In this case, he uses the upper side of the picture to see the angle and keep it the same. It's a common mistake to rotate a picture for a better fit on the chosen spot, which can falsify the outcome dramatically. No fancy rendering can fix that afterward. Size choice is key as well. A bigger picture is easier to replicate, but you have to avoid wrapping it too much or heavy distortions can occur. Once again, distortions which no fancy rendering can make up for. Here, Alex uses the glasses as a maximum width to fit a narrow spot like the forearm. Alex always keeps in front of him while tattooing both the original picture and the copy he drew the stencil lines on. This to be able to follow the exact position on the lines on the face while comparing what exact tone these lines are describing and the intensity of them value. These images should be kept very close to the tattoo artist because moving your eyes too much around is distracting, tiring, and you actually lose details and information while turning your head around too much. We start tattooing from the high contrasted areas, the deep black background that defines the right side of the face. He's using a 15 Magnum soft edge, packing the deep black as foundation for the rest of the colors. The Magnum, even if you pack super tight, will give a softer edge on the border of the face. Very important is not to have a hard line there. Lines sculpt the skin in a way that you cannot hide anymore with any packed color. So if you are aiming at smoothness and flawless transitions, you have to stay away from liner needles at this stage. He saturates black in the neck under the chin area, dipping straight without washing the tip from black to brown, and some gray to create those subtle tone variations while changing the intensity of the values. This accentuates the smoothness of the outer unfocused areas. Alex now starts to shape the face. First, he proceeds blocking out the shapes with a quick light pass of a medium tone color, in this case a brick brown. Blocking the volumes right away is key because you put down in one quick pass all the information you need without risking to lose the stencil. Plus, this pass is so light that you can then work on the darker tones, having a base to shape them on, without it turning tainted. It's very important to define the main shapes before moving on to the next step. Now Alex focuses on the lips, uses a 7 Magnum now, still just scratching or sketching the main shapes with the red similar to the one he will use for them later. You have to be precise in blocking in the shapes tightly, but quick not to saturate right away, but leaving that later. The risk in saturating right away is to get the color tainted later. You have to stay clean and true to shape while using Magnum, knowing you won't get an hard edge this way. Alex then goes in the deeper parts on the side of the mouth with a liner to better block the shape through blackest part. Alex stresses the importance of using magnums not to sign the skin too much. It's about sketching the overall shapes with a magnum, and liner use is limited to the deepest dark crevices, where you know you don't want to pass anymore. You write down basic information which you will base the later work upon. Alex now approaches the nose in the same manner, sketching in the main shapes with medium brown. Only for the nostrils, he uses a round shade to block precisely the shape. A 9 round shade to get the looser detail, while the round liner for the frame of the sunglasses. This accentuates the clean cut between plastic and skin tones. He then keeps working on the glasses, packing black tight on the first pass like under chin neck area with a 15 Magnum. While on the face, saturation will come by layering different colors. Here, like in the background, Alex goes for full saturation right away. Now he starts working on the net that covers the forehead. This kind of details can be scary to approach. That's why a preliminary study of the picture to clarify how to break down the more technical details is highly recommended. There are 2 overlapping nets, a red one and a black one. He blocks in the black one before saturating the skin tones because they are not going to cover it anyway, while leaving the red one for later. This last one, in fact, would be affected and loses sharpness by applying the skin tones on top of it. Again, he goes in with a liner to trace the glasses frame because this one requires a clean-cut outline that detaches it properly from the rest of the face. It would be useless to block in the colors with a magnum and then define it later, saving this way a bit of time. Alex then finishes the net on the forehead, marking it strongly, getting it ready for the skin tones. Doing hair, Alex prefers using a 15 Magnum used sideways. This way, it's easy to get to the fine lines or a single hair. He colors them fully saturating the skin with black, but leaving softer areas in between the shapes where he will add gray or a bluish gray to create the illusion of reflection. It's easier this way to get a smoother look. If necessary, he goes in later and packs some more darker tones. While building the main hair flows, keeping the magnum movement a little looser and letting the sideways movements of the magnum do their job is the key for a good result. Once these sort of magnum lines are done, even when you lay color on the top of them, they will show through giving a translucent and credible look to the hair. This point, the foundations for the tattoo are basically done. Alex laid down all the most critical shapes. Now he can wipe without worrying about losing anything. Now, with a liner, he accentuates the main volumes of the hair. He uses a 7 liner 0.30mm very tight to emphasize the hair movement strategically. Alex now starts adding colors in the background, creating the lights effect by overlapping in some areas dark tones of color to the black previously packed. The new tones that come out this way give a very random, unfocused look, helps receding the background and gives depth to the whole thing. Alex is now done with the background. Back to the sunglasses, he defines more the frame with a liner before focusing on filling in the lenses with the magnum. Even here, if we would look at the image at first glance, we could be overwhelmed by it. You just have to slow down, study the image, and try to break down the colors to the simpler shading. Studying how the colors build the shapes before tattooing them will give you the confidence to focus on packing the pigment without having to guess the tone or the value of the colors. Alex now goes in with the turquoise overlapping the black. The two areas both packed in with a magnum will automatically create a smooth look through a slightly blurry line, which is closer to reality. Looking constantly back at the reference, we can see that there are slight hue changes. The turquoise turns into green in the lens reflection. Instead of dipping in straight green with the tip dirty of blue, he now dips in yellow ochre. Same for the other lens until he gets to the full saturation. Still with rinsing the tip, Alex goes into the white to get some lighter tones, keeping tone and hue variations very close. Now he packs in some dark blue to round up the lenses more. By packing the dark blue afterwards over the already packed turquoise, he can achieve a smoother and realistic look. He puts some more blue in the frame as well with the magnum, and then he cleans it up some more along the edges with a liner needle. With a 7 Magnum 0.35mm, he fills in the tighter areas outside the sunglasses. He works quickly some of the net as a see-through the lenses. Very roughly, just an indication. He goes in the mouth, still following priority of the color hue. Reds, in this case, have stronger intensity than skin tones. That's why he chooses to do those first. Using a 7 Magnum, he lays down an undertone that blocks in the volumes of the lips, saving the tighter textures for later. Working with the Magnum sideways, he manages to be tight enough to be anatomically correct, but soft enough to be true to the image. In fact, in human features, there aren't hardly ever superlines, and even if there are some, they look more natural when packed with a Magnum. In every passage, he uses the same procedure. A base coat of medium tone which he will darken a bit to accentuate and build volumes, leaving empty skin only for the final highlights. He now works in the deeper parts on the side of the mouth. With a round shader, he works in the textures in the lips, isolating the white highlights areas. Then, with some pink, he overlaps the red. Skin tones are the most important part of the portrait. First, he lays down the mid-tones by mixing a flesh tone with some orange and quick dip in a brick brown. This creates a sort of burnt sienna, which gives a perfect warm natural look to the skin. Alex first packs the neck area. After the main tone is packed, He goes darkening up with some brick brown overlapping the previously packed black and brown, warming up the shadow part of the face. It's key trying to identify the kind of brown that's closer to the picture we are reproducing, whether it's Venetian brown or skin tone or brick red. Once this is decided, you can work with it by adding some ochre, some magenta to make it cooler or warmer, or some white to change it in value. Now he fills in as much as possible, moving fast with the magnum without looking for full saturation right away. This keeps the skin less stressed, which allows following passes of darker and lighter, cooler and warmer colors. Although in the photo the side of the face is darker, Alex first uses a lighter color combination to better calibrate the dark tones at the later stage, with a smoother outcome. Don't get scared by not achieving saturation at first pass. It will come together when you do the final passes. Without cleansing the tube, Alex dips in the dark brown and overlaps this shade over the previous brown pass. The two tones now mix in the skin, creating a soft gradient, slowly saturating pass by pass. He now dips from the dark brown in the black and quickly in some water too, to have the darker skin tone. Water makes the color transparent, giving you a translucent tone. Throughout all this hand machine movements, not to stress too much the areas we are working. It's very important to underline that. Alex keeps moving to the lighter areas, using as a light skin tone done by adding white and ochre when needed. He compares the volumes with the lighter tones, closing little by little on the light areas, left for last. He then overlaps the light skin tones mixed with white and ochre to the previously washed in medium tones. Again, this is the pro of using this technique, that the first medium tone laid down lightly can easily be darkened and also lightened. Alex moves now to the nose, which is already blocked in its main shapes by the medium skin tones. Going in with a lighter skin tone helps him to fill the area without having to recreate the volumes that will show through anyway. This way, the nose will naturally belong to the face. Alex now starts putting down the light colors. Normally starts from the forehead, which is a part usually heavily hit by the light. He lays down the light colors left to right till he gets to the reflected blue hint that hits the right side. In this case, he lays down the lighter skin tones, as if there wasn't any blue, and then washes in the reflected color, diluting the blue to create a smoother, less invasive and plastic result. Now he puts some shade of color under the frame of the glasses, which is the area more heavily hit by the light, using a slightly darker light tone. Some darker brick brown on the shadow part of the nose and some dark brown along the main line. An hard edge there would not be credible. Also under the nose, he whips slowly darkening the shadow area to better calibrate the hardness of it. Overlapping the light tones, the structure of the face starts emerging. In realistic tattooing, you cannot rush or skip steps. You want to get to the finished look because it will come eventually together only if you respect the necessary steps. Every layer you add to the color range will add to the realism of the skin tones. Alex is now putting down the lighter tones, a dirty white which he mixes by dipping the white without rinsing the tube from the light skin. The pure white must be reserved for the highlights or it will lose intensity. Then he goes back and darken up this light pass without worrying about getting it dirty by washing it down with water a bit. This way you'll protect the dirty white while getting a smoother gradient. Alex now works in some pink as reflected light in the chin area, washing it down with water for a better shade. By looking at the picture, Alex notices he needs more roundness to the face, which achieves by packing some dark brown mixed with a grayish blue and some water. In the cheek area, he still does some movements with the 15 Magnum. Once the skin tones are down, Alex blocks in the red part of the net just following the shape on the reference picture. With a liner, he defines the lips some more. Alex now puts in the bright colors in the background, big open masses, balanced unfocusedness achieved by overlapping random circles. He also fills in the spots left open in the hair. This will create reflection and shininess. Using sideways the magnum, he applies white to the light spots in the background that will mix with the undercolors, giving more brightness without interfering with the actual highlights. He now puts white highlights, again with the magnum, again not pure, in the shades. This purity of the white will announce the final white highlights, which he will put in with a liner instead for maximum intensity. He puts these final white touches over the previous dirty white. The same thing on the lips. It's important not to overwork with it. White has to be put down only in the more focused and uttered areas. Alex starts with the eyelashes. You have to be extremely precise following the line drawing but shading with the liner with an outward motion, marking it stronger at the base and thin at the end. With a washed up pink, he blocks the lower eyelid and then goes back to the upper eyelashes. It's very important to stress the curvedness of the lashes. Through curvedness, he will give depth to the eye. You have to lightly block the correct shapes of the main areas like this iris, the pupil, the shadow of the lashes on the pupil. The sketches in the textures of the upper lid, after which he can now focus on rendering without having to worry about losing important information mixed with brown. With some black, he starts blocking the shape of the eyelids to create the makeup, but also the actual shape of the eyeball. From black to brown, he defines the upper lid, while for the bottom lid, a little less defined, he used a bluish gray with a magnum. Staying purposely rough to achieve unfocusedness. With a round shader, he now fills in the pupil. With the same needle, he defines the outside shape of the iris. Alex doesn't use a liner to not get a hard edge, which would give a plastic look to it. He then shades in with the same round shader to create the base for the transparent texture in the iris. Moving from black to blue, dipping randomly in yellow ochre to get a blue-green effect. With a 9 Magnum, Alex fills in the more shaded parts of the iris. Overlapping lighter shades of green, yellow, and light blue, and building small textures with the side of the Magnum. Some overlapping happens on the upper eyelid, using some skin tones mixed with warmer colors to create more three-dimensional effect. Magenta and brown for the lower lids. Mixing in some light blue, he gives some reflections to the skin. Red, violet, and white create the right hue on the closer part of the eyelid. Instead, for the eye bulb, Alex uses a grayish blue to get some roundness. He will overlap some lighter color done by adding white to the gray. Alex builds more definition with magenta in the sides of the eyes. Alex builds more definition with magenta in the sides of the eyes. He then goes in with a deeper turquoise to darken the grayish blue, increasing the roundness of the bulb. Some violet lavender to warm the area, blocking the eyelashes with a very thin needle to do some sharpened texture. More overlapping in the iris. Once the previous color has settled down, with bright tones give more translucency. With something overlaid in the magenta texture. Pink has to be a little more opaque. The bright color hues give a less realistic look. The white parts are key. First, he fills them with the magnum, keeping them a little dirtier and darkening them up afterwards. Some more light skin tones on the outside. Some more texture here as well. With a liner, Alex puts the pure white in the iris. Final thin highlight on the side of the bulb to get a translucent look.